I'm hoping that you are joining me here today because you want to learn all about how to grade properly. And when I talk about grading, I'm talking about scaling and resizing patterns. So it's all about today's live that I'm going to go over is about teaching you how to take a dog wear size pattern and size it up and size it down so that it fits properly across all the different breeds and different sizes. So if you've ever made a dog wear pattern and found that, you know, you size it up, let's say, or you size it down and you think it's going to fit perfectly and it pinches underneath the dog's arms, or it gapes at the neck, or it's not long enough to cover the dog's back. And that might be because what you've done is you've simply taken a pattern and you've scaled it up or scaled it down evenly. You've just taken the size and you've just simply shrunk it or scaled it up. And that's where the problem is. So today there's several problems, and I'm going to go over the top 3 problems that I find that people have when they're scaling their patterns. And that is one of them. I started my business in 2015 and I started creating dog wear patterns and custom dog wear. And I have to tell you, my confidence in scaling and grading patterns and creating new sizes was nothing. I had no confidence in this whatsoever. I didn't know what to do. So what I did was every time I got an order for a new dog coat, I would measure that dog and I would make a custom dog coat to fit that dog perfectly. I learned a lot about dog anatomy and how to make custom dog-sized coats, but I wasted a lot of time. I mean, if I knew about how to properly scale a pattern so that it fit all the different sizes, I would have saved so much time. And that's why I'm here today, because I really want to share with you what I learned over all those years and all those trials and errors, how I learned how to scale a pattern properly. Now, one of the things that I want to just cover to begin with is that I'm going to use 3 different words. I may use them interchangeably, and you may have heard these on the internet or while you're doing your research: scaling, resizing, or grading. In general, they kind of mean the same thing, and a lot of people will use those terms interchangeably. Grading is a term that's used in fashion design, and what it really means is taking key grading points on the body and changing the size on those particular points. And so you're going to grade up or you're going to grade down to make different sizes. And that's generally the same thing as resizing a pattern or scaling a pattern. So I'm not going to get into the specifics of that, but I just wanted to say that if you've heard the word grading and you don't know what it means, it's a fashion term, but you'll also have heard things like scaling and resizing. And you're doing this, when you think about fashion design and for humans, we have a lot of different places where we will scale a pattern or change. When we're looking at changing a pattern, we're going to look at some key different places, like around the bust or the waist or the torso length. Those kind of things are some key grading points. Those don't really exist on a dog. When we're looking at dogs, we're looking at the key grading points of the neck circumference, the chest circumference, that's measured around the widest point on the dog's chest, the neck to withers, which is the withers on a dog are their shoulders, and that's where all the movement happens on the front end. And typically that's where a coat does up around that, or it'll be closed around that area. So knowing where the withers on the dog is really important. So one of the key measuring points, one of these key grading points, is the neck to withers point. And then the last one is the back length, which is just from the collar, where the collar sits, to the end of the coat where it meets the tail, the back of the dog. So those are the 4 key grading points when you're looking at changing a dog size, of dog pattern to different sizes. As I said, when I first started doing this, I didn't trust myself. I just didn't have the confidence to believe that I could scale a pattern properly. So I was always doing it. Every time I got an order, it was a brand new pattern. I literally went into Illustrator and I created a brand new pattern for every dog. But What I wish I had done, what I wish I had done in hindsight, I wish I had just said, I had all my patterns, and I had patterns and I had finished ready-made dog clothes in retail outlets and also online. And what I wish I'd done is I wish I'd just said, these are my sizes from extra small to extra large. These are the sizes. You can buy them as is. Because I didn't have that confidence, and I didn't feel like I knew how dogs' bodies worked, or I didn't know how to make sure that I had a really good change in size from the small to the large, etc. I made each coat custom, and that worked for a long time, but it isn't a great business model. And what I wish I'd done was I wish I'd had my sizes, or another thing that I wish I might have done was to specialize into a niche area, maybe making coats for small dogs only, or maybe even a brand specific. Maybe I would have made them for French bulldogs or really large dogs, maybe Great Danes or Whippets. You know, if you specialize and you niche down into these areas, you get to make a name for yourself for someone who creates really great clothing for those particular areas. Now, there's no reason that you can't just do the whole gambit from extra small to extra large and try to fit all sorts of different dogs. But I'm just warning you, that does create a lot of patterns and a lot of different things that you've got to be able to cover. And again, knowing anatomy and knowing how things change between the sizes is super, super crucial. So today I'm going to walk you through the 3 top mistakes that I find people make when they're making patterns, and some of the mistakes that I made when I was doing it. Mistake number 1 is treating resizing and scaling as if you are literally going up and down by making it bigger and making it smaller. The thing is, dogs change, their bodies all shift as they grow, and also the different size dogs. Proportionately, those key points that I mentioned earlier, they all change. They're not going to just grow exactly the same from one size to the next. So it's really important when you are scaling and grading a pattern that you take these 4 key grading points or scaling points into account when you're changing the sizes. So your size that you want to look at is your neck circumference. I already mentioned these: the neck circumference, the chest circumference, the neck to withers, so from the neck to the shoulders, and then the full back length from the neck all the way down to the tail on the dog. Those are your key measurements. And if you scale these things proportionately, then it should work out so that you have a pattern that's going to fit as you go through those different sizes. So I'm going to go into the overhead camera here, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to work with a pattern to change it down to a smaller size. Now I'm going to be working with my cozy coat pattern here. You can make this coat, you can find this cozy coat pattern on my internet, on the website I should say, on the internet, and I'll give you the link in the description below on how you will find this pattern. So this is the cozy coat pattern, and it's first I want to go over are the neck to withers points and the back length on the pattern. So the neck to withers, as I said, if I was taking a dog, I'm going to show you my handy stuffed animal here. The neck to withers point on the dog is, we take a measurement from where the collar would normally sit on the dog, and we go to where we draw a straight line up from behind the front legs on the dog. We go straight up to where their spine is, and that's where their shoulders are, right here. So right up at that point on the spine. So you take a measurement for where the collar would normally sit, which is where your jacket would start, the back length would start, and then you measure down to that point on the back where the withers are. So in my case, this is 4 inches. And then the other measurement that we would look at is the back length. So again, we'd start our measurement from where the collar would normally sit on the dog, and we'd run straight along the back, the spine of the dog, to where the tail starts, the base of the tail, or where the bum is on the dog. So we've got a measurement of about 10 inches here. Just get rid of my little stuffy here. If we look at the pattern, the neck to withers, which is, I will tell you time and time again, this is the most critical point on the pattern, because this is, as I mentioned when I was showing you the dog, this is where any type of a garment that you make for a dog, it typically is going to wrap around the belly area in this point, at this point where the neck to withers are. So knowing where those shoulders are helps you to position the portion that runs around the belly area. In this case, it's the belly band on my cozy coat. So on a regular dog, let's just see if this one matches up. Yeah, so this one generally matches up to the dog that I just measured. So it's not quite exactly the same, but the measurement here is 4 inches. Now, I'm going to use a measuring chart, a dog size measuring chart. I have one of these on my website. If you are interested in downloading it, I'll give you the link to that in the description. But I'm not sure if you can see this, probably not, but you can download the measurement chart if you'd like from the website. So if I'm looking at what I've got here is a medium dog coat is what I'm working with. If I look at the neck to withers measurement, that's 4 inches. And then I look at where the small is, it's actually only 2.5. The neck to withers measurement is only 2.5 inches. I'm just going to work in inches because that's the way my brain works. But if I look at that on the pattern itself, what I would do if I was going to size this pattern down to a small size, my neck to withers is 4 inches. I'm going to take this down to 2.5. So what I would do is I'd start at that point. Let's make sure, let's just move this up so it's all inside the camera. This is my neckline. You disregard where the seam allowance is. You're not going to take that into account right now. But my neckline starts here, and on the medium coat, the back length ends here. So I'm going to draw a line straight along there. So my measuring point that I'm starting at is at the collar, and my neck to withers for the small size is 2.5. So I would make a mark here. That's my withers point. And then what I would do is I would create, I'll pull this away, and I'm going to create a straight line going down from that withers point. I'm just going to do a dotted line that goes straight down. And that gives me the point of where this new position, the new position for where the belly wrap area, anything that wraps around the belly, is now going to shift over to this point here. So that's pretty straightforward. If I'm going to scale the neck to withers, I'm just simply moving along this back line on the dog coat. The next measurement that I want to take into account here is the back length. So on my size chart here, the back length for a medium is 14 inches, and the back length for a small is 11 inches. So that's pretty simple math. It's just 3 inches different. So what I would do is take my coat where it starts, where it ends. Let's just put the ruler here, get my head out of the way there so you can see. So I'm going to move back by 3 inches and make a line there. So that's my new back length. I'll put a little dotted line straight down from that point. And then the rest of the area that we need to now look at is how we're going to work with the belly band, which works on the circumference of the dog, and the neck area that wraps around this neck of the dog. And as you can see, these have some area in them that have a functional ease, where the Velcro, in this particular case, they've got Velcro that wraps over each other, or you may have elastic in this area that cinches everything together. So that's mistake number 2, is that people are going to often forget about the functional ease. And it's so important that when you're working with functional ease, that you want to take that functional ease away first, grade your pattern based on the measurements from your dog chart, and then you add that functional ease back in. Now, one of the things that I do want to say is that when you are sizing patterns, you want to just work at one size at a time. You don't want to go from a medium and then size right up to an extra large. You want to do that incrementally because things do change. They shift from pattern to pattern. So it's best to do it incrementally. I always start with a medium pattern and I scale up to a large or down to a small. And then I go from the large to the extra large and the small to the extra small. So that's a really good thing to do as well, just to make things work a little smoother for you. So on a dog coat, typically you're going to want to have some kind of a functional ease built into it. The reason for this is dogs move a lot in their dog wear. They are constantly running, lying down, stretching. They're doing all sorts of different things in that dog wear. So you want to make sure that it's super comfortable for them and super functional. Now, if you are making some kind of a garment out of stretch fabric, maybe like if it's a knit, some kind of a stretchy fabric, that functional ease is often built into it already because the fabric stretches. But if you're making a coat that's out of, let's say, waxed canvas or some kind of a waterproof fabric, that stuff doesn't stretch, right? So what you need to do is add some functional ease into the pattern itself so that you can add that kind of movement area in there for them, and also a little bit of flexibility in how that coat does up. So on the cozy coat pattern, the functional ease comes from where the pattern overlaps each other and creates the Velcro area where that overlaps. So in this case, it wraps on the belly here and also on the chest here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that extra overlap, that functional ease, and then do my grading and then add that back on afterwards. So if we look at the size chart here, we've got, I'm going to be looking at the chest circumference now, we'll do that. And if I look at the medium size, the chest circumference is 21 inches. I'm going to size it down to the small, and so that measurement is 17 inches. So that's a difference of 4 inches. Now, because we're doing this on the fold, everything I do is going to be divided in half. So let's start with the measurement of the medium size coat. So that would be, if it was 21 inches, that would be 10.5 inches. And then everything else is where the functional ease is on this, so where the Velcro overlaps. That's where the garment ends for the medium size. And then for the small size, as I said, the small size for the chest circumference is 17. If I divide that in half, it's 8.5. So I'm going to be doing 8.5 instead of 10.5. So that's 2 inches smaller. So 8.5, my new chest circumference would end there. And I make this mark on this neck to withers line because that's where I'm going to create the belly band. So just to review here, if I'm doing a chest circumference, I'm going to measure from the back line, the fold line on the pattern, down to where the actual chest circumference is from the chart itself. Then when I'm finished, I'm going to add that functional ease back in. I still need to have that area in there that I can add to have the Velcro overlap with each other and add that functionality to close the coat up and also give a little bit of flexibility to do that coat up so that it fits the dog. So what I typically do is I would do about 20% on to for the functional ease. So if I look at my 17 inches, which is the full circumference, or 8.5 inches, if I look at that and I add 20%, I usually do like around 20 or 25%, depending on the garment and how I'm designing it, but let's say 20%. If I add that 20% onto of 17 inches, which is the full circumference, 20% of 17 inches is 3.4 inches. Let's round that up to 3.5 inches. And again, because this is on the fold, then I'm going to divide that in half. So my measurement for the functional ease, I'm going to add on another 1 3/4 inches past my 8.5 inch mark here. So if I add an additional, let's start on an even just so it's easier to see. So 1 3/4 inches means that my new overlap area, the end of my belly band, is going to start here. So I'll put a line there. So just bring back this pattern here. So what I've just created is where this ends. So I've added back on the functional ease where that Velcro overlaps each other. Now you can use this same kind of theory to do the neck area. You're going to take off that functional ease, the area that has the overlap on the neck, and then you do your measurement, and then you add that ease back on. Now this is a little bit more, it's not challenging, but there's a little bit more, a few more steps to it. For one, when you're measuring here, you're going to be measuring around the curve. So you would use a French curve or something like that to figure out what that measurement is. Sometimes I just use my measuring tape, kind of straighten it out, and then I wrap that around to get the neck circumference. I'm not going to go into grading the neck at this point, but I do have a full course on this. If you are interested in working through exactly how, like a step-by-step process on how to grade a pattern, I have a course on this, and I go through all the phases that I just talked about, but also the complexities which do come into the areas around grading the collar, because what happens is on a smaller coat, the collar curve is going to come up a little higher and it's going to be shorter, and on a larger coat the collar curve is going to come down lower and it's going to be longer. So the course goes into that. Also I cover how to grade and how to scale and size up a t-shirt, which is a lot more complex. But I will just kind of finish this off so that you can see how this pattern will come together. So I'll do this in a little bit of a darker pen, and I'll bring in my cozy coat so that you can see what we're trying to do. So we're going to take this point from the neck to the withers, and that is where my new belly band starts. So we've already got a line down there, and it comes down to here. This is the bottom of my belly band. So I would do a straight line across there. Where's my pen? There it is. Okay, so I'm going to do a straight line. Got a Sharpie in my mouth. I'm going to do a straight line across there. And then I'm going to do the width of the belly band. Now again, my course does go into details on how to size this proportionately, but for now I'm just going to eyeball it and show you how to do it just slightly smaller. So I would end my belly band here for a smaller size, just so it's not quite as wide as it would be on a medium-sized coat. So I'm going to just line up that line, and then I like to add a little bit of a curve to the pattern. You can eyeball this, or you could use a French curve to create your corners, however you like to do it. I usually just eyeball it, or what I'll do is take my old pattern and just use that as an outline to draw the curve. Whatever works for you. I typically will just eyeball it. So in this particular case, I'm going to just eyeball the corners, and then I'll draw this up with the pen from here so that I've got the other side of my, just do a rough line there. So I've got the other side of my belly band here for the small size pattern. And then I want to do the back length. So that is from the collar area right down to the end of the coat. And my new back length is here, and we've drawn a line here. But the other thing that we want to do is scaling the coat length, and that's how long, coat length, not to be confused with the back length, but the coat length is how long it drapes over the side of the dog's sides. So on the medium size, it comes here. Again, my course goes into how to scale this, but I'm just going to eyeball this for now. So I would make it slightly shorter and maybe right about there. So again, I would take a French curve or eyeball it, whatever works for you. And just, I'm going to draw a little dotted line along here, and then I'm going to do a French curve around that. Just for the purposes of getting through this demo, I'm going to do a very quick, short eyeball sketch of how we want to finish this neck circumference. So if you were looking at doing this really quickly, your neck circumference on a medium is 14 and the small is 11. So if I took my measuring tape and did a very quick rough measurement of this, we know that the actual neck circumference without the ease, I want to take that ease off first, ends right about there. That's where 7 inches is. So on my new smaller version of the coat, we're going to take that neck circumference down to 11. And I think I didn't mention this, but what happens is, of course, because this is on the fold, you are going to cut that measurement in half. So I said that the neck circumference on the medium is 14, but because it's on the half, we're cutting it on the half, you would actually cut that down to 7. On a small coat, the measurement is 11, and I'm going to cut that in half to a 5.5. So on my medium here, we've got, I'll just use this here. I'm going to do a rough outline there for the medium. As I said, when you're doing a smaller version, you want to come up a little bit higher. You don't want to have that same deep depth for the neck. And if you were going larger, you'd come down lower. But in this particular case, since we're doing the small, I'm going to do a really rough measurement with my measuring tape to 5.5 inches. And that gives me an idea of, that's 5.5 inches there. That's how long my neck circumference would be before the functional ease. So anything after that is, just do this really rough here. Anything after that is the extra ease, the extra functional ease that I would put on for my Velcro overlap. So let's go back to our measuring here. The functional ease, or sorry, the full neck circumference is 11. I would divide that in half for 5.5, and then I would multiply that to add my functional ease back on. I'm going to multiply that and come up with 20% of 5.5. Is anybody able to do that quickly? 10% is half an inch. So we're looking at about, I'm going to do it really rough here, about an inch. Sorry, I'm so bad at doing math, particularly when I'm on camera. But we're going to add an extra inch. Let's add an extra 1.5 inches here for my functional ease. And so that allows me this area for the overlap for my Velcro. And again, I'm going to round that corner. And we've got a nice curve here for that. I'm going to round that corner. Again, I'm going to eyeball how deep I want this neck cover area to be. This is the area that wraps around the neck on the dog. I'm going to reduce that a little bit so that it's slightly smaller than the full medium size. So I think about that deep would be good. Again, my course does go into how to do that more accurately, but for this purpose, I'm just going to rough it in for you. And then you can draw a line straight across here, and I'm just going to draw a dotted line so that it meets up with my withers point. And then I'm going to continue that on. No, I'm not going to continue it on, but I am going to add this line from my base of my coat to where the belly band wrap is. So in order to get these rounded corners. Just to finish this off, what I typically will do is I will round all of these corners off, and that just makes it so it's not such a, it looks better when you have those nicely rounded corners, and it also makes it so that it's a little bit more comfortable on a dog. So I just typically will use my French curve, or just by hand I'm going to round those corners off. And then we've got our basic new coat size all ready to go. So I'm just going to draw that in. I left the lid off this so it's nice and dried out. I'm going to draw this in very quickly so that you can see my final scaled pattern. One line across the back, and there you go. So now we've got a very quickly demoed version of changing the medium pattern down to the small. And if I was going to go up larger, I'd do the exact same thing, but in reverse. I would go bigger, so I would make a longer back length. My withers would shift to the right instead of to the left. My coat depth, the collar area, would drop down further, so I have a deeper curve around the neck, and also it would extend further out to the left. My belly band would shift to the right on a larger coat, and it would also come down further, down from the back line. And the back length is also going to come out here. And then of course you are going to also scale the drape of the coat length from the spine and how far it drapes down the side of the dog coat. The last thing I would do to this is add my seam allowance around. So I won't do that now on the camera, but I just wanted to show you a general idea on how you can take a medium-sized coat and size it down to the small. So that is mistake number 2. And then the last mistake that I just wanted to touch on, which is pretty quick. I'm not going to go into demo for this one, but the last thing that people tend to often do is take for their first trying to scale a pattern project, they'll take a really complex pattern. And the challenge with that is that there's lots of different parts to those. Sometimes there'll be lots of different parts. You'll have little seams all over the places. You'll have curves, lots of different curves to deal with. You're going to have panels, darts, all sorts of different things that make that scaling project, that grading project, a lot more challenging. So what I always recommend is to start with, if you're first learning how to do this, start with something simple. Start with something like the cozy coat pattern that I just showed you. It's a nice, simple pattern that you can work through, and it has very few curves. The curves are really just in between, around the arms and around the edges of where that where the Velcro sit, and around the back end, so that it drapes around the corners of the back end on the dog. But everything else is just straight lines. The other great thing about the cozy coat pattern is that it's just 2 pieces. There's one piece that you're dealing with for the overall body size, and the other piece that I didn't really show you on camera, but is the collar. And again, it's super straight, super easy to scale that collar for a larger or a smaller size. Super simple. So I always recommend that if you are going to be starting for your first time, just start with something simple. If you are interested in learning about what's a good pattern to work with, then I would recommend, I have a podcast that I did that's called What Makes a Hackable Pattern. And I'll put the link on that down below in the description. But this does kind of walk through and show different examples of different types of patterns that are good to work with, and some that aren't so good to work with for your first projects. And again, if you are interested in kind of taking this a little bit further, I do have that course that walks you through how to scale a t-shirt, which is a lot more complex because you're looking at doing underneath the arms. You've got the arms and how the arms fit to the chest section, the body section on the dog. You've got length of the of the arms. There's a whole lot of different things to think about when you are scaling something like a t-shirt. So the course does kind of go into that and show you different methods of, or the methods of scaling a t-shirt. But that is a very simple overview of the top 3 mistakes that people do when they are grading and scaling a pattern. Grading is, so I've used, probably in this whole demo, I've used a few different words interchangeably, but the grading is the word that is used for fashion design, and scaling and sizing are other words that are often used interchangeably. So I think I did touch on that, but I just wanted to reiterate that I use those words a lot, and when you are doing your research, you will probably find that those terms are interchangeably used. There are some differences between them, but you'll find that in general, that is the terminology that are used. So I hope that kind of gives you an idea of the different things to look out for, the top 3 mistakes, just to give you some ideas on how to go about doing this scaling yourself. If you have any questions at all, I'm more than happy to help you and answer those questions for you. So feel free to send your questions off to me. You can either do a comment down below, or I'll also put my email in the description down below, and then you can just send your questions to me by email. I'm more than happy to answer those for you. As I said, just like, this was a game changer for me. When I learned how to scale patterns, it just opened up a whole new world for me. And when you learn how to do this, it allows you this freedom to start designing and thinking outside the box and creating brand new patterns. So start simple. Start with a really simple pattern, grade it up to a larger size, grade it down to a smaller size. I always start with the medium pattern because that's a good middle range one. Scale it up, scale it down. Then you can scale it even larger. Once you get it down to the larger size and the smaller size, then scale it up to the extra large, or down to the extra small. And then once you get that comfort and you understand how to do that, then go on to some more complex patterns and start opening up your world to different design and different ideas. And that's where things get really exciting, because you start looking at fashion. Then when you're walking down the street and you see something and you go, oh, that's so cool, can I make that into a dog coat? Yes, you can. And when you learn how to do these grading techniques, then you can do it at scale. And again, the reason I want to come here and teach you guys these things is I want to be able to open up that creativity for you. I think creativity is so important, particularly now. The world's a little bit challenging, and I think when we are able to express creativity and do things with our hands and lean into a creative kind of world, I think this really helps us in so many ways. There are lots of studies about the connection between mental health and creativity. I'm not going to go into details, but there is a lot of studies on this, and I really think there's a great connection. So this is why I really want to just kind of get out to the world and show people and share what I've learned. And I hope that some of these tricks and things that I'm sharing with you bring you into a little bit more of a creative world, and start to open things up for you to start playing around and doing things with your hands. So thank you for joining me. I so appreciate it, and I hope to see you next week. Again, I go live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, so feel free to join me live, and feel free to add any questions that you have, and I would be more than happy to cover those when I do my lives. All right, happy sewing, enjoy your creative world, and we'll see you next week. Okay, bye-bye.